Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 17th annual Jefferson County Community Read 2020. My name is Mary Hawes, and I'm a longtime supporter of Jefferson County Community Read. We are so happy that you've joined us tonight in celebrating literacy throughout Jefferson County. Since 2003, the Community Reads program motto has been one book, one county. The program came into being because a dedicated group of people believed in the shared book experience. Every year, the committee looks for a book that our county can read and discuss together. Over the last 18 years, we have picked a variety of fiction and nonfiction books that we hope will interest our community members and provide us with good discussion. Many of the books we have read together were written by Oregon authors. The Community Read programs through the years have been many, including a quilt show, a butterfly hatching, books in both English and Spanish, hikes led by authors, book groups and author talks in our schools, and photography exhibits. These programs have been held in Crooked River Ranch, Warm Springs, and Madras. In 2003, we kicked off the Jefferson County Read with the memoir, Life is So Good, by George Dawson, the grandson of a former slave who learned to read at the age of 98. Richard Glaubman collaborated with Mr. Dawson in writing this book. I am pleased to note that this year we have chosen a book by Molly Gloss. The Hearts of Horses is the story of a woman who broke horses during the First World War when many men were fighting overseas. I encourage you to check out the presentations and interviews listed on jcld.org. Enjoy, and thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Karen Esvelt, and I'm chair of the Library District Board and also on the Community Read Committee, and I'm here to introduce Jon Bowerman to kick off our Community Read for 2020. I've known Jon since I was teaching years and years ago and had a writing festival that he called one day and was chairman on the board of the Fossil School District and wondered if he could bring some students over and take part in our writing festival. And I said, let me check, and sure enough, the more the merrier. And since then, I've been acquainted with him. He's done many things. Lived in Europe, ski school there, ski school in Washington, rodeoed, grew up in Eugene, went to school there, was in Vietnam in the Marines, and is living in Fossil, has been for a few decades, and on his family's homestead. His great-grandparents lived out there. I don't know if it's part of it is his different time, but he is a rancher. He has worked with horses for many years and knows a lot, which I immediately thought of him when we were talking about people who might help with our community read. He knows so much about horses, and he is a horse whisper trainer. And I just want to introduce you to Jon Bowerman. Thanks.
We're going to talk a little bit about this book, The Hearts of Horses, that the Jefferson County Library is, I guess you'd say, promoting right now. I read it a while back. I don't remember all of it, but it's written by an Oregon author and about a young lady during the period about the time of the First World War who is starting horses. We don't call it breaking horses anymore. One of the fellows that I read recently said, the object of training is not to break a good horse, but to make one. I think that was Evaristo Cantu, who brought horses from Spain to northern Mexico about the year 1580. So we're not trying to break them. We're not trying to break their spirit. And the interesting thing about this book is here's a young lady from Pendleton, according to the novelist, who is going around from ranch to ranch, gentling, getting horses ready to ride and actually riding them. And there are some detractors among the ranchers because this is not the way their grandfather did it, and so by golly, it's got to be wrong. And I always have a problem with people that we got to do it the way it's always been done, because sometimes there's a better way. And so this young lady, like I said, goes from ranch to ranch, training horses. making good horses better. Most of them are unbroke when she starts to work with them, and they get better as the story goes on. And I guess the main point that I would disagree with in the book was the author claimed this was a new way, and actually it wasn't a new way. A Greek soldier and horseman by the name of Xenophon, who was born 430 BC, wrote a book called The Art of Horsemanship, which is still available in print today, and it has been used over the years. And Xenophon promoted a more humane way. When we look at horses, we're looking at a prey animal. Prey animals are animals that learn to run very fast, otherwise they get eaten by predators. Horses have eyes on the back, on the side of their head, so they can see almost 180 degrees if something's sneaking up on them. People are predators. Our eyes are in the front of our head. So what we're wanting to do is put a predator on the back of a prey animal. And the old-fashioned method that they allude to in the book is they're trying to force it. They're trying to make things happen. Just like a cougar who's trying to eat the horse jumps on its back, the horse is not going to stand still. It's going to run. It's going to buck. It's going to do whatever it can do to get the cougar off of its back. So if we take the same approach that the cougar does, which was the way many people did it years ago, rope the horse, snub it to a post, sack it out. Sacking out means taking a gunny sack or a saddle blanket and flipping it all over the horse until it gets desensitized to being touched all over its body, from the tip of its tail to the tip of its nose, underneath, that up and down the legs. Then they would put the saddle on and somebody would get on and ride. The method that this young lady is promoting takes a little bit longer in the beginning, but is a whole lot faster in the end, because she is getting the horse ready to accept her as a partner, like you would accept someone you've never met before who comes up and asks you to dance, be it a man or a woman. Some dances are girls' choice. This dance is not horse's choice. This is the predator's choice. So we're trying to get the horse to accept a predator on its back. And using the method that this young lady used works very, very well, except in the case of the, in this novel, there's one individual in particular that says this is not the way to do it. So when she's not there, he's going out there and chousing the horse around so he can prove that her way doesn't work. I won't say how she takes care of it, because you're supposed to read the book. This gentle method of horsemanship goes back as far as Xenophon, who was born in 430 BC. And he wrote a book called The Art of Horsemanship. I've already said this, but there was a fellow before him called Simon of Athens that also wrote a book on this kind of horsemanship. Unfortunately, none of those books remain. So Xenophon's the first one that we use. And it really revolutionized horsemanship back in that era. But then we got into the Dark Ages, and virtually everything, the art of drawing, painting, the art of horsemanship, all disappeared. And really wasn't until about the 1200, 1300, thereabouts, that we started seeing a revolution going back to what I'm calling the old style of horsemanship, that is the humane method. In the 1500s, there was an Italian whose name escapes me right now that read Xenophon's book, quoted from it many times, but he was one of the forceful type. He used bits that were very inhumane, trying to force the horse through pain to do what he wanted to do. Gradually, over the years, different riders, different horsemen decided there had to be a better way. I learned horse breaking from a contract horse breaker in Utah about 50 years ago. And he had, I don't know, 70, 80 head of horses, 5 and 6 years old, had never been running on the Utah desert since they were weaned as yearlings, and hadn't seen a person up close, much less been touched. And the way this fellow did it, we would run one into the pen. We had a big snubbing post planted in the middle. We would rope the horse, get it snubbed to the post, sack it out, put the saddle on. I would get on and ride until either the horse quit or I hit the ground. And then you got back on and did it again. And it works with a lot of horses. Horses are herd animals. Within the herd, there's, call it a pecking order if you like. There's the top horse. Everybody obeys this horse. All that horse has to do is look at a lesser horse, and that horse will move off. Or if he doesn't, the head horse will lay his ears back and start to walk toward him. That horse will leave. And it goes through the herd all the way down to the lowest horse on the totem pole or on the pecking order. And everybody can boss him around. Horses have 3 reactions to something they don't like. The first one is flight. Get out of dodge. Run. Horses run pretty well. That's why we have horse races. The second one, if you get them cornered, is they're going to fight. And horses can fight very, very viciously. They can strike with their front feet, kick with their hind feet, bite with their teeth, and I mean really, they can take a big chunk out of a person or another horse or a cow, even though their teeth are not sharp like a predator's. The jaws are very strong. So flight, fight, and the final one is submit. And when you're using the method of forcing the horse, a submissive horse can turn out to be a pretty good horse. But using that same method on a horse that is a dominant horse in the herd that's used to everybody obeying him, you'll usually end up with a horse that nobody can ride. Rodeo bucking strings are full of horses like that. They don't take any guff off anybody, horses or people. And I've seen some bucking horses, they even had to put a muzzle on because they were dangerous to the pickup men and to the people working around the arena. But the horse bucked really well. So in spite of the fact that we were forcing ourselves on these horses, many of them turned out to be good horses. Many of them also turned out to be very bad horses, man-killer type horses. You didn't want to get in the corral with them. And I've had the opportunity to work with, I don't know, maybe a dozen or 2 of those kind of horses. Lona Burkhart, who had a horse ranch over across the river here in Ashwood, bought one back that had bucked off 2 owners and 3 trainers. And she said, everybody's bad-mouthing my horses. I'm going to buy this horse back if you'll take it and turn it into a good horse. It took me 2.5 years before I could ride the horse. Initially, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with me. But over time, he was out with the other horses. He'd see the other horses come up and get petted and whatnot. He finally gave in to me. But he still didn't like people. My ex-wife, she couldn't go in the corral to catch her horse if he was in there, couldn't go in the pasture to catch her horse if he was out in the pasture. He would come at her at a dead run with his ears back and his mouth open, and he was not bluffing. And she made me get rid of him because he was dangerous, and in retrospect, I'd have to say he was a much better judge of people than I was. I should have kept the horse. Those horses can, with proper training, turn out to be good horses. I think it was Landon Gray, who was an Olympic dressage rider, said the most difficult horses have the most to offer. They can run faster. They can, anything that a horse can do, they can do it better. They're like Michael Jordans in the horse world, so to speak, and which is one reason why the methods that this young lady is using in the novel are preferable to forcing the horses. One of the things that Xenophon said, and I'm going to read it so I get it right, I've got it out of the book. For what a horse does under compulsion, in other words, what a horse is forced to do, is done without understanding of the horse. And there is no beauty of it either, any more than if one should whip and spur a dancer. Imagine a ballet dancer or something, and the coach, teacher, as the case may be, gets frustrated with them because they can't do the pirouette or whatever they do, the leaping. And I've never seen a ballet, but I can kind of imagine. If they got out there with a whip or used a sharp spike to poke, kind of like some people use their spurs, do you think that's going to make the dancer want to be a dancer, going to make them dance better? In rare cases, it might, if someone's kind of lazy and their parents sent them to dance class even though they didn't want to go. You might get them to dance. But the one that really wants to do it, using spurs, using whips, is not going to make a better horse. It's going to make a horse that's fearful of, well, what's this person going to do next? That's the predator in us that wants to force things to happen. If we start looking at things from a horse's perspective and try to do it the way a horse would do it, we'll get along much better, and we'll have a better horse to ride. Tom Dorrance, who really started this style of riding about, oh gosh, it's been about 40 years ago. He taught Ray Hunt, who took it all over the world, and he has many disciples around now that are making their living teaching this style of horsemanship. And Tom said, reward the slightest effort, the smallest try. As soon as you see something that the horse is thinking about doing what you want, reward him. If we pick up on the rein, if we jerk on the rein, imagine having a piece of steel in your mouth with a thing on each side. You jerk on that rein, what it's going to feel like in your mouth. Horses are more sensitive than we are. If you have been around horses, you can see a fly lands on them. They can feel that fly, and they wiggle their skin to make the fly get off. So they're more sensitive in the mouth as well as all over on their skin. So we can just kind of lift up on the rein and wait until the horse gives a little bit. And the minute it gives, drop the rein. You give a horse a cue to do something. The minute you get it, stop doing it. If you're trying to get the horse to move over and you can't just push him with your knee and lower leg, you can turn your spur around, but you just push it against him. You don't get out there and kick, although most people do. That's counterproductive to making a good horse. When I go watch a rodeo and I hear the mothers of young barrel racers as the horse is running home is kick, 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 kick. You don't need it. If the horse is giving its best, why would you? Now it's become punishment, not a request. And as soon as you get what you want, reward the horse by removing whatever cue you gave the horse. One individual who quotes Xenophon repeatedly is Alois Podesky, who was the director of the Spanish Riding School in Vienna, Austria for 25 years. I believe he was the longest tenured director in the whole history of the school. And anybody that goes to Europe should certainly go to Vienna and take the opportunity to see what they do with these Lipizzaner horses. And Podesky says, the one principle that should never be abandoned when training a horse, namely, the rider must learn to control himself before he can control the horse. This is the most basic, important principle to be preserved in equitation. And I was working with some at-risk students. They were down here riding as a reward for getting their grades up. And I started going through my 36 or so books on riding and horsemanship and principles of horsemanship. And so I started taking notes for these kids, and one little girl said, you know, this would work very well with people too, wouldn't it? And she had come from a very abusive family and was now in a foster home. But you think about what Podesky had said there, that you've got to control your temper. When you lose your temper, you're non-productive, whether it's with people or horses or dogs. I know a lot of people, that maybe some that are going to watch this, have never owned a horse, but most people have owned dogs. And you see a dog, normally a well-behaved dog, does something that displeases the owner. And the owner wants to demonstrate to the dog that this is unacceptable behavior. Well, the dog picks up on the fact that it's in trouble long before the owner can lay a hand on it. So it's calling the dog, it's trying to corner the dog. The dog can move faster than the person can. So pretty quick, the owner is not only frustrated, but they're also angry. And they finally get a hold of the dog and they thump on it pretty good. Now, when that happens, each one of you think, does that make the dog more willing to come the next time it's called? Or going to make the dog distrust the owner and not want to be around? And that's why this method of forcing the horse to do things, that what they call the old-fashioned method, even though that method does not go back as far as Xenophon. If we hurt the horse or the dog or the person, they're not going to want to be around you. So we have to get control of our emotions. To be a good horse trainer, dog trainer, school teacher, you need to have your emotions under control. And people say, well, so-and-so makes me so mad. You stop and think about that. Nobody can make you mad unless you let them. You get control. Nobody can make you happy. Nobody can make you feel good unless you let them. And when you let somebody else have control of your emotions like that, you're giving them control of your life. So it's better if we start to feel angry. I like to just fold my arms and smile. And that helps me relax and get ready to move on and do it correctly. Some years ago, I was going through a divorce, which I didn't want, and I didn't have a lawyer. And I had maybe 15 horses out in the pasture. And when I would go out to change sprinklers, all the horses would come running up because I'd given them a treat. I always have treats in my pocket, and everybody gets one. But one morning her lawyer called, and I was not in a good mood afterwards. I went out in the pasture. Nobody was interested in a treat. I don't think I could have caught one of those horses in a box stall. They could feel that that I was not in a good mood, and they didn't want to take a chance on a predator doing something to hurt them because I was not in a loving, want to get along frame of mind. So that's kind of one of the foundation stones of training horses this way. If I get up some morning and for whatever reason I'm not in a good mood, the horse is going to get a day off. I don't want to do something that I'm going to regret, that they're going to regret, that is going to make it harder for me to get along with them the next day, because they won't totally trust me if I lose my temper. Everybody, I'm sure, has had the experience of walking into a room where somebody else, be it a parent, a spouse, a child, a friend, neighbor, whatever, and before a word is spoken, you can feel that you're in some kind of trouble. Don't have to, we can feel that. Everybody has had this experience, I'm sure. But we can communicate by speaking. Horses, dogs, cats, and whatnot, they have a very limited vocabulary of sounds that let you know they're happy or warning, as the case may be. And they have that developed to a much greater extent than we do. So the fact that they can pick up on our moods that well, it behooves us to be in a good mood. Hey, I get to go out and ride today. There's a whole town full of people 60 miles away from here. They have to go and sit in their office or at the check counter in the supermarket or something like that. I get to be outside in the sunshine, fresh air, and get to go ride a horse or multiple horses all day long. Some people pay to do that. I get paid for doing it. So I can get up in the morning. I've never had one of those days like I hear people say, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow. I get to go to work. I hit the ground running. I love it. I've been very fortunate in my life to do for a living what a lot of people pay good money to get to do with me. And so I want to make sure that the horses have that same feeling that I do, that, oh boy, here he comes. He's got some treats, he's going to give us some grain, and then we're going to go out and do something interesting. Maybe we're going to chase cows or move cows, or we're just going to ride up in the hills, and who knows what we're going to see up there. And that's the goal when we're teaching horses that way. And for those that have adapted that sort of method, it works very, very well. Okay, we started out talking about the hearts of horses, and I'd just like to finish up by saying, you know, I think this is a worthwhile read. I mean, naturally, I read it because it was about somebody that was training horses, and there's some other things in there that will appeal to other people. But the thing that I really like about it is it might open eyes of a few more horse owners that don't understand all of these things and realize there are places they can go that can make their horses, can make them better riders and make them better horse people. So I think this is a worthwhile read, The Hearts of Horses.
Hello, I'm Gabrielle Beebe, your Adult Services Specialist. I hope you enjoyed Jon Bowerman's insights. Join us tomorrow for my interview with Molly Gloss, the author of this year's Community Read book, The Hearts of Horses.